this is Candy with eyes2jesus.blogspot.com, and in today's video I'm going to show you one of the many ways of obtaining a kombucha SCOBY. SCOBY is an acronym. It stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast, and you're going to need that live culture if you want to brew your own kombucha. And I used to brew my own kombucha regularly, then I got rather tired of it and I got rid of my SCOBYs, that's the culture. But we're drinking it again, and it's expensive to be buying it even in bulk at Sam's Club, so it is time to grow my own SCOBY. Now, if you have a friend who is actively making kombucha, you can get a SCOBY from them. There's also places online where you can order one, but I like growing my own. So, to grow your own SCOBY, you need a nice mug full of hot water. You can make it boiling hot, or if your hot water heater is set pretty hot like mine is, it can just be really hot tap water. If you're unsure of the purity or quality of your water, then you're going to want to probably heat up some bottled water on the stove. I have well water, so I am just going to use really hot tap water for my well. So, inside your one mug, you need a tablespoon, and you just want to put in a couple tablespoons of sugar. You're going to need this sweetness in there to feed the culture. And you want to mix it in until it is completely dissolved, which will be pretty quick since the water is hot. Alright, then one black tea bag, and pop that in. You want to steep the tea. So yeah, right now we're just making a cup of hot sweet tea. So I'm going to let this steep for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to remove the tea bag, and then I am going to leave this hot cup of tea sitting on the counter for about an hour so that it cools down to room temperature. So I will see you when this tea is steeped and cooled down to room temperature. So my sweet tea that I brewed and let steep, it is now cooled down to room temperature. I let it set for a while. So now we're on to the next step on making the kombucha SCOBY. Now, I went ahead and I just moved the tea here into this glass Pyrex so that it would be easier to pour, especially on video. But next, I'm going to take this half-gallon mason jar, and I just washed it. It does not have to be completely dry on the inside, but I dried the outside so it wouldn't be slippery. So if it looks wet, that's why. Alright, so I'm going to add in the tea that is cooled down to about room temperature. And to that tea, you'll need to add some kombucha. So, I like to, usually when I grow SCOBYs, I've had some pretty good SCOBYs that I've grown from the Synergy brand. So it's been years since I've done it, but I think it should still work. There's a lot of floaty culture I see in the bottom on this bottle. It's best if you can get a non-flavored kombucha. The stores I was looking in, they all were flavored, and I've done it with flavored too, so it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to use a bottle of Synergy Organic Kombucha in their Trilogy flavor, because I can never seem to find unflavored anymore. Woo! That is crazy. It wasn't even shaken up. There we go. So this is going to give me a pink SCOBY, but that is okay. Alright, and then if you want to use a smaller container, that's fine, but you want to make sure you have plenty of room, and that's why I just decided to use my half-gallon mason jar. I originally was going to use that glass Pyrex container that you saw me pour the tea from, but it just wasn't enough room with the tea in it to add the bottle of kombucha. Alright, now I got my little mess cleaned up. Next, you want to take a cloth. I like to use flour sackcloth, and I already cut it to a square. So this is a sheet of brand new flour sackcloth. Place it on top. Grab a rubber band. Rubber band it on. Mark your calendar. You're going to want to take a look at this in about 7 to 10 days. This is going to go into a dark cabinet where it's going to be left undisturbed for 1 week. In 1 week I will check it, and it should be growing a skinny SCOBY on the top there. I'm going to want it to be hopefully almost 1/4 of an inch or so before I use it, but a little bit less than that is fine. If the SCOBY's a bit thin after a week, then I will leave it going for another 3 to 4 days. So on average, it usually takes about 7 to 10 days to grow that SCOBY. And then you'll have a SCOBY and you'll be ready to brew yourself some kombucha. We are 13 days later and the SCOBY has finally grown and thickened enough to where I am comfortable using it. So we're going to get our first brew of kombucha going with this brand new SCOBY that we just grew. And this is my 12-year-old daughter, Miss Rachel, and she is a kombucha drinker. She loves kombucha. So we're going to go ahead and just start brewing our own again like I used to, and that'll save money. So this time around, for our first brew, we're just going to brew, one of these large jars worth, so that we can grow more SCOBYs, and then we'll be able to do multiple brews after that. So I just took this out of the cupboard, and recall we couldn't find original or non-flavored, I should say, kombucha, so we used Trilogy, and remember I said we'd probably get a pink SCOBY? We got a pink SCOBY, and that's okay, it will work just fine. So, like I said, we let it go for 13 days. We have a very good, viable culture here. This kombucha mushroom or SCOBY can be used. Alright, so what you're going to need is you're going to need 4 cups of boiled water, and you're going to need some raw apple vinegar, apple cider vinegar, and then you're going to want some kombucha liquid, which we'll be gathering from this jar. Alright, so I'm going to empty the contents of this jar into this clean bowl because I'm going to go ahead and brew the kombucha right in this jar. So I'm just going to carefully pour it out. And there's some sludge here at the bottom of the jar. I'm going to leave that in here. This is actually extra culture, and it's going to help us grow our new kombucha SCOBY, because every time you brew kombucha, a new mother or SCOBY grows. So I'll be starting this with 1 mother or SCOBY on top. By the time this is done brewing, there will be 2. There will be 1 that is likely going to be grown on top of the second one. Alright, so I already boiled some water. I'm going to grab a pot holder here. And I'm on well water. If you have good well water, you can use that. Otherwise, if you're not sure about your water, then you can use a very filtered water if you have a good filtration system. Otherwise, you should probably use bottled water, which is what I did for years. So I'm going to stand over the sink and I'm going to pour this 4 cups of boiling water into our jar. And there we go. And of course, it's going to have that yellowish tinge because I didn't clean the jar before using it. Now I'm going to grab 4 black tea bags. 4 bags of just your basic black tea. So I'm going to open these up. And Miss Rachel, if you can go ahead and start opening up a few of those packages for me. And I'm just going to pop them right here in our jar. Just going to drop them in. Thank you. Alright, now I'm going to get a spoon. I'm just going to kind of push them down. Okay, we are going to just let the tea steep in our jar of very hot water for 10 minutes. And here we are back 10 minutes later. So, still got this. It's still very hot, but the tea is steeped. So I'm just going to grab my spoon, and I'm just going to use the pot here that I boiled the water in, and I'm just going to scoop out all 4 of the tea bags. They've done their job. Ooh. Look at that. They're all coming out together. Woohoo! Okay. Alright, now, to this, since I have boiled water, I can do this from tap. Otherwise, if you're not sure of your water, then you're going to want to use bottled water. But I'm just going to go over to the sink, and to this, which is still quite hot, I am going to add some cold well water. Yeah, isn't that pretty? Alright. So, how much water did I add? I just added some, about up to here. I left some room for the kombucha SCOBY and for fermentation to take place. So, don't really have a measurement here, and it can vary. And you know what? Your measurements don't have to be perfect with kombucha. Now, before this cools down too much, though, I need to add some sugar. I'm pouring in a cup of white sugar. Now, you can put in the white sugar to just the water right after it's boiled, and then you can steep your tea that way. Or you can put in the white sugar before you add the water, which is where I probably should have done it. But if you're like me and you forget the sugar until the last minute, you can add it after you've added the cool water. Just get it in there and you have to stir well. So, this lovely noise is me stirring in the sugar. I have the sugar mixed in, and this is cooled down enough now because we added cold water the rest of the way that it's going to be able to accept a kombucha SCOBY. But first, we're going to have to take some measures to help ensure that our brew won't mold. So I'm going to do a half cup of kombucha, and I'm just going to use the kombucha liquid that we grew the SCOBY in, and I'm going to pour that in. Alright, and then to that, I'm going to take some raw apple cider vinegar, and I'm just going to fill my half cup up halfway, so we just need a fourth cup of that right on top. And that's just going to help ensure that it's not going to mold. Alright, now my daughter here, Miss Rachel, has very thoroughly washed her hands, so she is going to very carefully scoop the SCOBY out of this kombucha liquid that I poured here into the bowl and place it on top in the jar.
Oh. It's not as delicate as I thought it was going to be. Ew. It feels like a piece of ham.
It made such a lovely sound.
Wash my hands.
And the SCOBY usually will float at the top as this one is doing, but sometimes they go to the bottom or they kind of hang out in the middle. It doesn't really matter where it is in the brew. So I'm going to take my clean flour sackcloth and I'm going to put it on top of the jar and rubber band it on. And this is going into my brewing cabinet, and in 1 week I will check it. If it's got a nice new thick SCOBY growing on top, then it is done. If not, then I will keep checking it every few days until it is done. And we'll check in then. And here we are. You're going to go approximately a week to 10 days longer, and if your SCOBY is growing slow, 2 weeks is fine. There is no hurry. So I just took our half-gallon mason jar out of my brewing cupboard. We have a new SCOBY grown on top. Meanwhile, for the past several minutes, I boiled 3 cups of water because we're going to get another brew started right away. And then I let 3 tea bags steep in that hot water. And Miss Rachel, if you could please remove those 3 tea bags. And then I'm going to give her a cup of sugar here, and then if you can just thoroughly mix in 1 cup of sugar until that's completely dissolved. Alright, so that's starting the next brew. So while she's mixing in the sugar in the 3 cups of very hot tea, I'm going to empty this container because we're going to immediately start a brew in this container again. So I'm going to remove the rubber band and the flour sackcloth. We got gorgeous SCOBY in there. And I have a clean bowl here, and I do have clean hands, and I removed my jewelry. So I am going to take the 2 SCOBYs out, the original SCOBY that we grew, and the SCOBY that grew on top. So the original SCOBY is the mother, the SCOBY that grew on top is the child. So I'm going to take out the mother and the child, which are connected. Sometimes they grow unconnected, but we do have 2 SCOBYs here. I'm just going to pop them in the bowl here to the side. Alright, now I'm just going to set the bowl off to the side. And I have over here, I have a clean juice pitcher and a fine mesh strainer. And I am going to pour this kombucha into this pitcher here, and this is just a temporary housing for it because it's best to store kombucha in glass. But I'm going to strain through here so that if there's any bits in there, I like to strain it out. Totally optional, the bits won't hurt you. I personally gag if I swallow them, so I like to strain my kombucha. And it will be lightly carbonated, so you're going to have some foam and some fizz. If you take a look You can see that white foam on top. It's already settled down, but it was foaming and fizzing pretty good while I was pouring it in there. Now, normally I would go ahead and clean this really quick, at least a rinsing if nothing else, before starting the next brew. However, I want to keep this sludge in here because I want my SCOBYs to still get a bit stronger. So I'm not going to clean it this time. I will probably clean it the next time. And I'll probably clean it like every other time or every third time or whenever it seems like it really needs it. So I'm just going to get another half-gallon brew going until I grow another SCOBY. After that, maybe I will then keep a SCOBY back as a spare and then use 2 to get 2 of these going and then do a gallon at a time and then go from there. Recall, every time you make a brew, a child SCOBY is going to grow on top of your mother. So I'm going to keep the mother and child together, and those are going to become the new mother, and that's going to grow a new child on top in this brew. So I'm going to be getting this into bottles here in a little bit. Miss Rachel, good job. She has the sugar completely dissolved in this very hot tea. So we are ready to move to the next step. So I'm just going to pour this into our half-gallon wide mouth mason jar. And recall, this is steaming hot. I'm going to add some cold water to this. I need to leave some room at the top, so we'll be adding more things to it. If you have purified or well water, that might be good. If you're not positive of your water quality, then use bottled water. We have well water, so I'm just going to add some cold well water. At least a few inches there from the top. So, by adding the cold water to the strong hot tea, this cooled this down to approximately room temperature. And that's what we want, because if this is too hot, it will kill the SCOBYs. Alright, so for our next step, I need to pour in about a half cup of the kombucha that we just brewed. But I'm going to do a 1/4 cup, so half of a half cup of the apple cider vinegar. And then these are going to help ensure that this doesn't mold, but that it grows a proper bacteria. Miss Rachel, I'm just going to just a little mix with the spoon. You know what? It kind of went in there pretty good. Alright, and Miss Rachel also has very clean hands, so I'm going to give her the honor of putting the 2 SCOBYs on top. So you want the bigger one on bottom and the smaller one can be on top. Aren't they adorable?
That's not the word I use.
Yeah, and you go rinse your hands. Well, I think they're just precious. Alright, so I'm going to take my flour sackcloth, set it on top, take my rubber band, and put that on top. And this, in a few moments, I'm going to put into my brewing cupboard, and I'm going to leave it alone for a week. Now, that's all that is left to do, is I'm going to rummage around for my funnel. And I just got these clean glass bottles. These are Aquasana bottles, by the way. I've had these for years. I got them off of Amazon a long time ago. And I am just going to use a funnel and pour our kombucha into these bottles. Then I'm going to cap them and pop them into the fridge and let the kombucha chill. And then we'll have some good kombucha to last us for a while. Have a blessed day.
Just flapping and dry my hands. No.